he's a Microsoft MVP as well. He runs the .NET user group in Mississauga, and he's recently been selected as MVP, and he's also going to be leading the MVP Mix conference, which will be happening at the Microsoft offices in Toronto. So we'll actually talk a little bit more about that during the announcement, so I got a slide for that, and you can maybe say a few words about that. But everyone, Obi.
All right, thank you. Excuse me, my computer cannot do a dual display, so I'm going to have to look over there, to actually do the slides and the demo sequence. So as Ken said, thanks very much, Ken, and thank you, Laurie, as well, for having me over here. This is actually my first time. This is my second talk, actually, on EF Core. All right, so let's just have a show of hands. How many of you have used Entity Framework 6 before? Most of you. I'd say about 60%. All right, how many of you have used EF Core? One time. That's what I thought. So, we're looking at maybe about 5%, 3%. Anyway, so, well, Entity Framework has got a bit of a history. Let's start with what actually Entity Framework is all about. So, Entity Framework essentially allows you to write object-oriented code against a conceptual schema. Okay? In other words, to put it in layman terms, it addresses the problem of what's called impedance mismatch. That's not quite layman, is it?
It's all right, I took some electrical engineering.
Okay, so essentially what impedance mismatch means that, you guys presumably are C# developers, right? You like C# code or VBNet code, right? I mean, VBNet is just as first-class citizen as C#. So you write this object-oriented code, right, with polymorphism, inheritance, encapsulation, and all the good stuff. So that is on one hand. On the other hand, we have this relational database, which basically, is a relational algebra. So as you can see, these are two disparate technologies. Object-oriented technology on the one hand, and relational database on the other. Now, in order for these two disparate technologies to talk to each other, it's not an easy piece of thing, all right? So for that, what Microsoft did, and I mean, there are other ORMs also out there. So what they did, they actually created what's called the Entity Framework, okay? It's just a layer of abstraction, if you will. So it's a layer of abstraction that basically allows object-oriented technology to talk to the relational database, okay? So let's see. So let's talk for a minute how Entity Framework came about. So a couple of years ago, Microsoft, actually this was a little over a couple of years ago, they wanted to, well, Entity Framework 6 was already out, and they were looking to work on the next version of Entity Framework. So they said, okay, we'll call the next version Entity Framework Everywhere. So what that meant was that you should be able to write Entity Framework code anywhere on any device. But then they thought that this is not quite what we really need. So they scrapped this name and came up with Entity Framework 7. Now, mind you, Laurie is laughing because she knows about it. So Microsoft's been touting this name for a couple of years, okay? It was only up until January of this year. They said Entity Framework 7, essentially, I mean, or the original idea was that it was an evolution of EF6, okay? And in that, what they meant was that all of the features of Entity Framework 6 would automatically be transported to Entity Framework 7. But when they were building Entity Framework 7, they realized it doesn't really cut it. So they scrapped this name also and now call it EF Core. Now, come to think of it, really, EF Core does make a great deal of sense. Why? Because EF Core is nowhere like Entity Framework 6. We'll actually come to the differences and whatnot. But EF Core essentially is built from ground up. Okay, it's a whole new level of paradigm shift, the way they look at Entity Framework now, especially with EF Core 1. So our agenda is fairly straightforward. We're going to be talking about Entity Framework for a little bit, okay, and then we will compare and contrast between EF6 and EF4, and then I've got some demos, just to cheer you guys up, and then I'll point you, to the resources that you can go to and learn more about Entity Framework. Fair? All right. So this slide is actually similar to what Ken showed earlier, but this is Entity Framework focused. So if you recall, those of you that have been using Entity Framework, back in 2008, this was .NET Framework 3.5 RC1, okay? They had released Entity Framework 4X. So during that time, what had happened was this Entity Framework 4. I believe it was 1, it was bundled with the .NET runtime. And then a few years later, when Visual Studio 2010 came out, they released, so this is 4.x now, and 5. So when 4 and 5 came out, what they decided to do was, now the disadvantage of bundling Entity Framework 4 with the .NET runtime was that anytime they wanted to do a bug fix or wanted to add a new feature, they had to literally wait for Visual Studio .NET Framework to be released. And as you know, the release cycle is typically a couple of years. They don't release every year, they release every couple of years. So they had to wait at least a couple of years before the users and developers could actually see what Entity Framework, some of the newer versions of Entity Framework consisted. So what they did, they actually added Entity Framework out of that in NuGet. Now, while that was the case, there were still some components that lived in the .NET Framework. So moving on, then came Entity Framework 6X, or 6.1, 6.0 followed by 6.1. Now, in Entity Framework 6, they totally decoupled the Entity Framework from the .NET runtime. Okay, so this was available solely on NuGet. I think they've had quite a few million downloads ever since its release. So the most current and the most stable version of Entity Framework 6 is 6.1.3. Now, so there are two streams that are running parallel. On the left-hand side, Microsoft is still working on Entity Framework 6. As a matter of fact, the end of the year, they are going to be releasing a newer version of Entity Framework 6, which will be 6.2.0. Okay, so I guess the reason why we are here is not just to extol the goodness of EF Core, but to also let you guys know that Microsoft is not going to be pulling the plug on EF6 anytime soon. As you can see, 6.2 is still in the works, right? And I think by December timeframe, they should definitely have a newer version of Entity Framework 6.2. Now, while 6.2 is being built, okay, I think they're going to add some new features, maybe some bug fixes and whatnot, they are also working on Entity Framework. Now, Entity Framework 1.0, Core 1.0 rather, this was released a couple months ago. I think it was June 29th or something like that. So it's fairly new, right? It's fairly new, and they are also working on the next release. I do not know the time frame. We'll probably find out, but they are, because Entity Framework 1.0 is brand spanking new, right? It's not a full-blown product. I mean, come to think of it, it's only one, right? So you're only opting into product 1 right now. So what is the main idea behind Entity Framework? Entity Framework Core, they want to target newer platforms, okay? Now with Entity Framework 6, if you look at this, I think this is the one that Ken had showed earlier. If you look at the this diagram, the one on the left, Entity Framework 6 only targets the full .NET framework, okay? And Entity Framework Core basically targets not just the full .NET framework, so basically it can run inside, I'm talking about the EF Core right now, okay, the one that is highlighted in blue. It can run in Entity Framework, in .NET Framework, full .NET Framework, but at the same time, it can also target the ASP.NET Core, the one that Ken talked about. But in addition to this, we have a Xamarin Queen sitting here in our midst. You can also build applications in Xamarin. And as you very well know, and I'm sure Lori must have brought you guys up to stuff with what the capabilities of Xamarin are. You can write Xamarin code in C#, and you can deploy them on any platform, may it be OS X, iOS, Android. And you also have the monoclass libraries in there. So this is the power of EF Core. So EF Core can be written and deployed, on multiple platforms. Right. So another advantage of Entity Framework Core, unlike its predecessor, which is EF6, EF6 targets only relational databases, and that's about it. Okay, but that's good enough. I think majority of us who write enterprise applications predominantly use some type of a relational database, I presume. Well, I do. I use SQL Server, at work. Anyone uses Oracle here? One, two, couple hands there. Anyone uses DB2, perhaps? Mostly SQL Server, I'd say, right? Okay. So EF Core not only targets relational databases, but also non-relational databases. So that's, I think, one of the compelling factors why EF Core is really gaining traction, is because you can target not just multiple platforms, but also databases that are both relational and non-relational. So one of the ideas behind creating these set of services on which Entity Framework is based on is to be able to write a link query, and I'm sure you all know what link is. So when you write a link query, the whole idea is to pull the objects back in memory, okay? Such that you can track changes, you can apply the DB set to the database provider of your choice for persistence and whatnot. And we'll see that actually in one of our slides. So some of the examples of the new providers that EF Core targets are predominantly all Microsoft family of products. As you can see, SQL Server is given. There's SQLite. There's SQL Compact. So SQLite, SQL Compact essentially target your UWP type applications. But if you're building a enterprise app, then clearly you'll be going with SQL Server. But in addition to that, there's also Postgres. And there's Azure Table Storage. Redis, I believe, is currently in the prototype stage right now. You're welcome to use Redis. And you can also use in-memory testing, which is used mainly for functional testing purposes. But it is it's currently in the preview stage right now. I believe there is also Oracle, but Oracle is also being prototyped right now. Yes.
Also MySQL and SQLite.
Yes, you're right, absolutely. So majority of these database providers are actually open source. So that's another good thing. With the exception of Oracle, which is closed source. Now I don't know how important this is to you, whether it's open or closed. It doesn't really matter. I mean, only if you are making some contributions to one of the database providers, it makes sense, because that way you can pull the repository out of the GitHub, you can play around with it and put it back. into GitHub. So that's some of the benefits of open source. Okay, so these are some of the features that EF Core brings out of the box. Things like batching, client eval and link queries, shadow state properties, SQL Server sequences, alternate keys, and there are many more. So like I said, it's actually built over a core set of components. It's very lightweight, and by that, it is actually lightweight. If you compare EF Core with EF6, telling you there's like a yawning gulf, in terms of the digital footprint. Entity Framework 6 is about over 5 megabytes in size. EF Core, on the other hand, under 500 kilobytes. So again, you can see, there's quite a bit of difference between the two APIs. So once again, it's a top-level API. So some of the things that you are used to working with, for example, DB context, DB set, right? So those things are same. So as far as the development experience goes, you really won't see a great deal of difference, when you are, let's say, coming from the EF6 world and moving over, to EF Core. The experience is actually going to be the same. And I'm actually going to show you the demo in a little bit. So it's basically, a collection of services. These are loosely coupled services that uses dependency injection. So one of the advantages of these services, so to speak, is that you can pull a component out, and you can work with that component, you can modify it, you can derive from it, and you can also implement your own methods and then register them in your DI container. And one of the compelling factors why EF Core really stands out from its predecessor is it's very, very optimized. It's highly optimized, and you will actually see that. We'll compare some numbers. We'll run the tests of EF6 versus EF Core, and we'll compare the numbers and see how fast EF Core is in terms of CPU usage. And so Microsoft, they encourage developers to start using cloud computing. So if, let's say, you have deployed your solution to Azure, what pay-per-play component actually means is that you only pay for the component that is in use. So, for example, if you are not using SQL Server at all, you are not going to be charged what the SQL Server use. So the assembly is not going to be loaded, and you're not going to bill for it. So that there's a great benefit of deploying it to SQL Azure. Now let's compare and contrast EF Core and EF6. Now, so as I said a short while ago, so some of the things like the top level APIs, your DB context remains the same, DB set, it remains the same. So the only thing is the implementation of some of these APIs is different. Everything else is exactly similar. So the code base for EF Core is built from ground up, okay? Now, if you wish to, say, port your existing EF6 app to EF Core, sorry, can't do that. You probably must have seen, if you have, let's say, a database, that you've created in 2008, for example, and you want to port or migrate the database over to, SQL 2014 or 2016. There's a wizard, there's a database wizard available that basically allows you to migrate your data and your database, from the previous version, to the older to the newer version. In the case of EF6 to EF Core, unfortunately, there is no silver bullet that allows you to do the coding and all that stuff. So there is a manual work. I'm not saying that this cannot be done, but you will have to actually write, your POCO classes, which of course, having written your POCO classes in EF6, you can, bring them over into EF core, and then you will have to kind of compile them, and you've got to be sort of cognizant of the fact that there are some newer APIs that have been introduced in EF core, but there are also certain things that you don't have in EF core. Let me ask you, how many of you like to use database first approach when modeling? Database first? Okay. So the database first, do you actually mean by ADMX modeling, or?
I type the SQL create statements, I create the stored procedures, and then when I try to use Entity Framework, it says, oh, you can't use stored procedures. And the 2 times I've attempted to use it, I've given up. Because it wants to go directly to the physical design, and I don't want it to. I want it to go to the conceptual model that I built into my stored procedures. So I've ended up coding the objects myself, which is found frustrating. I'd love for Entity Framework to handle the grunt work. I just haven't found a way to have it do that, while still giving me control over the queries that are mapping the physical to the conceptual.
Right. So what version of EF are you currently using?
I haven't used it.
Oh,
I've attempted twice and said, this is just,
Well,
so I was gonna follow up with a question.
Sure.
Maybe I'm missing something because I haven't
No
spent enough time in it.
Okay, all right, no problem. Well, that's fair. So EF613, EF613 basically allows you, actually there are 4 ways you can build a model, okay? One, of course, is code first. And code first is also actually divided up into 2 parts. I'll come into the other part, but the second one is model only. So that's one of the ways, one of the second ways of actually creating your model, so to speak. Okay, so this model-only approach essentially is akin to how you would create your database diagrams, in SQL Management Studio, right? Similarly, so it's like drag and drop, that kind of an experience when you create your entities and create all your columns and all this stuff, and then in that canvas you would right-click on it and you would say generate model, from this conceptual model, that you created in EF6. It's not very popular, but it's available in 613. Now, the third one, the one that you are referring to, is the database first approach, which is your EDMX. It basically creates an EDMX, right? So now the only downside to that is that, okay, so here's the thing. Let me just clarify. Now, this actually happens in the event where you are targeting an existing database, right? So there's a difference. You can target a brand new database, or you can target an existing database. Peter, is that right?
Yes.
Peter, okay. So I think what Peter is referring to is targeting an existing database such that you can reverse engineer a model from the existing database, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's actually not terribly hard, to tell you the truth. I mean, if you have some time, maybe I can show you after.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, no problem. So
I think his problem was the reverse engineering doesn't pick up stored procedures and use them. You have to import them separately and create them as functions that are off your context.
Oh, okay, I see. All right,
Right.
is that, so
So
this is
wizard
only,
will-
Yes, no, that's exactly it.
You have to
It's-
import
it's
them individually.
something I've missed.
Yeah.
you know what, David, you're
Presumably
absolutely right. There is
it's-
some configuration and all that stuff, that is required. But you can actually bring not just your tables, but I can also bring, your stored procedures in there. You know what, David, that's an interesting thing, that you raised. In fact, there's also an execute SQL method, which you can actually use and call, the stored proc and pass, whatever parameters, that it takes, and then issue, that way, right? That's
You
also.
can do it that way. There's lots of different
There
ways.
are
you can do it.
different ways. There are different ways to skin a cat, but yeah. So you know what? There is some sort of a configuration involved. I tell you, there's another way, but this is actually not the EF6 way. This is actually using link to SQL, the plain old link to SQL, and it's still supported. It's still supported, and you know what? It's great. It's really wonderful for stored procedures. You could actually call this link to stored procs for all we know. Like you have link to XML, you have link to objects. This is link to stored procs. It's just another flavor. But there's a template that says link to SQL. So underneath, what it does is it actually generates what's called the DBML file, the database markup language. That's what it generates on the So it's essentially just a matter of dragging from your SQL Server pane whatever tables that you want, you can drag them to your DBML canvas,
Right?
right? And that's essentially your context. So once you create your context, you can go nuts after that. But talking of context, although this is not in scope, context, should be sort of as small as possible. You don't want to bring all the 1,000 tables, into your context, because that's going to sort of, undermine, the performance and all this stuff. Anyway, we can talk that, after this.
Okay.
But that's another way. Actually, you would love that. It's fairly straightforward. Okay, so some of the other things that are missing in EF Core, as I said, EF Core, for all intents and purposes, is a great piece of technology. Okay, it is highly performant, and it's lightweight. But some of the things that are missing in EF6, for example, things like connection resiliency. It doesn't have, you were mentioning about stored proc, so it doesn't have stored procedure mapping support at all. Okay, you cannot do lazy loading and so forth. What you can do easily using EF6. So those are some of the things that are actually it does talk about that. Now the question is, should I be using EF6? I'd say with your eyes closed. Absolutely. EF6, they've been working on EF6 for about 8 years. Like I said, the first version of Entity Framework, I wouldn't say EF6. I'm talking about EF4 all the way to EF6. So the first version came out in 2008. This is 2016. So it's been 8 years of development, and EF6 is a very mature product. It's robust. It's industrial strength, and it offers a lot of features out of the box. Okay, EF4 on the other hand, while it's Mickey Mouse in comparison, but it does not you cannot compare. It won't be fair, to compare EF6, which is really rich in feature set, versus EF Core, which is really a new baby. All right, so it's got subset of features, as I explained before, but it is highly performant, and we'll see that actually in the demo. Is it 8:15? We have to wind up? Okay. So I'm going to be another 5 minutes, and then we're going to jump straight into demos. So clearly, EF6 definitely is the right choice for your applications. Now, that being said, when you use EF Core, be aware of some of its limitations as well. Okay, don't just because EF Core, is new, it's flashy. You don't want to jump into EF Core just because it was released by Microsoft a couple of months ago. Be aware of some of its limitations. As long as, and there's actually there's a document that compares and contrasts the two. Maybe you can look at it. I'll point you to that slide, and then make a decision which one you want to go to. Now, look, if your idea is to build an enterprise app, I think EF6 is perfectly okay. All right. With EF Core, the only thing is, like the link query translator, it's a little bit flaky. Okay. You got to remember, you are still opting into version 1 product. And I think we covered a little bit about porting. So it's actually a port, not an upgrade, because of the fact that it misses the visit, the upgrade visit, because it's not a visit, because it's been built from ground up. All right, so I think it's time to do a bit of a demo. What we have over here is, can everyone see? Can you read the code? Maybe there's light here or something. Yeah, let's dim it a little bit, please. So essentially, what I have over here is simple code, nothing extraordinary. So I have a class down here, okay, and with a bunch of properties in there, and I have a context which is derived from DB context, and then I also have a type which is of type block, a DB set of type, And the next thing we want to do, and this is actually new in Entity Framework Core, and that is here we basically override the unconfiguring method. Okay, so you would notice that we have an extension method called use SQL Server. Now that's because I've actually downloaded SQL Server from NuGet. Okay, so and another thing I want to say to you is that SQL Server, in the case of EF Core, is not privileged anymore. Unlike EF6, where SQL Server, was just given. I mean, you had no choice but to use SQL Server. Although you could always download, via NuGet. Some of the other database providers, maybe Oracle or DB2 or Postgres or, as you said, SQLite and MySQL and so on and so forth. But in this case, in EF Core, when you get EF Core, or when you actually start to create EF Core applications such as this one, you don't really have SQL Server installed automatically or by default. So this is something that you have to get from NuGet. No big deal. But in our case, we have SQL Server there, which is why it lit up to show that there's SQL Server. Had I got Postgres, it would have shown that extension method, Postgres. Okay, so so this is also, like I said, this thing is new in that in the case of EF6, when you create a model and you want to target a brand new database, what it does is it basically goes and creates the database for you somewhere. And you scratch your head, what the heck, where did it create the database, right? So here, what EF Core wants you to do is to explicitly define the database that you want created, and also where you want created. So let's type our connection string. I think the first thing we would need is the server. I have it installed. Actually, I've got a SQL Server 2016, so that's my server name. And the next thing you want to do is we want to give a database name. So let's just call it. Let's just call it KWK for Kitchen Water. Okay, let's give it a alias as well. Let's say then. And the last thing we want is a credential. So in my case, I'm just using Windows authentication. So we'll just say. I think we are set over here, so that's all we need. And one other thing I'm going to do. Now, in order for me to actually create a database, it can be done in one of two ways. So as you're familiar, with the migration API, okay, you can use the migrations, and then whatever properties you have defined in your class. In this case, there's only one class. Or let's say if you had dozens of classes, it would have just gone and created the database and the tables for you automatically, right? Using the migrations, and then of course you would do an update database, and then it would mirror everything that you would have here in the model, and then it would create the tables and whatnot. But there's actually a shortcut that has been introduced in EF Core, and that is ensure created. Okay, this is actually a very powerful method, and what it does is it basically bypasses all of the goo that is otherwise needed when you run your migrations and all that stuff. So what it's going to do is it's going to take your whatever model you have created down below, and it will go and create it for you in the database if we just run this. Okay, so I actually have a breakpoint here, and what I'm going to do is let me just go and build this. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to hit F5. We'll give it a minute for it to create the database for us. All right. So it looks like it has gone and created the database for us. And the next thing that it's going to do is it's going to add this record. We're just giving it a name. We have a name property over there. We call it a candidate triangle, and we also specify the URL. And it's the same way you would create your EF6 app. You would add this to your type, and then the next thing you would do is save changes. And what I'm doing afterwards is I'm just basically, getting a count of the blocks that we've added. In this case, there happens to be just one. And then we'll just do a write line and display it for you. All right, so let's see what's happening over here. Let me go into the database here. Oh, it actually did, right here. You know what, I removed the breakpoint. I should have actually left it with a breakpoint over there, but essentially, it's just gone and created this block for us. And if we query this, here we are, right? So, as you can see, it was a pretty simple app. So we added a record, and we did the save changes on it, and then basically we just read, the record back in from the database. That's all there was to it, all right? Okay, so this was actually something very simple. The next exercise that we have, it's actually a, I think you would like this. Still 1 year, so we just stop this. I'm tempted to actually run this because I'm going to show you the console here. Oh, okay. You know what? The reason why you didn't see this is because it actually appeared, on my. Okay, so, well, we had created, our record earlier, and then we went and created, a second record. So it's basically showing you. I think here it shows you the count here, but we cannot see right now. But essentially, there are a couple of records, that we just added. So that's what it is here. All right. So the next thing I want to show you is the difference. So let me just open this up. So essentially what we have over here is, we just got a bit of a test harness. And here, like I said before, EF Core can run very comfortably in the full .NET framework. And this is actually the full .NET framework, as you can see over here, that I'm running EF Core as well as EF6. If you look at the if you look at the code, so I've got a couple of methods here. So let's just run a simple test. And I'll show you the code, what this code is. Nothing fancy. We're just pulling records, in this case, customers. There were 20,000 customers in this AdventureWorks database. And we are populating the context for EF6. And then we are basically writing it to a list. Similarly, we're doing the same thing for EF core, okay? So let's run this guy real quick. So as you can see, it is running a few passes, and in the first pass, EF6 took about 1157 milliseconds. EF core, on the other hand, took just 406 milliseconds, exactly the same code, right? In the second pass, which is iteration 1, you can see there is an improvement from 65% up to 71%. So in iteration 1, there's 1107 milliseconds, and then for EF6 and for EF core, 324 milliseconds. Now mind you guys, the code is exactly identical. You know, there's nothing optimization or anything like that going on. In the last iteration, we've got 1091 milliseconds and 234 milliseconds. Even better, there's a 79% improvement. So as you can see over here, there is what's called caching. Caching has kicked in after it ran its first pass, and it improved the utilization and the amount of time, the latency and all the stuff, you know, is far less in EF core than EF6. What do you think? Isn't that great, guys? All right, so this was one of the simple demos, I should say. The next one is actually a little bit complex in that some manipulation with the code. So as you can see, this query, although not overly complex, but you know, we are doing a little where, we've got a predicate over here, doing a little order by, we're skipping in a few hundred records and all this stuff, doing a little grouping, but again, you know, adding all those customers, you know, to the list. So this is for EF6, and the same thing is for EF core, okay? So let's run this puppy. Look at that. So as you can see, EF6 in the first pass took almost 2 seconds, or 1893 milliseconds. EF core, on the other hand, took only 628 milliseconds. But look what happens in the second pass. Because of caching, it improves the performance to 78%. EF6 took 1582, although there's some improvement for EF6. But EF core, on the other hand, only took 341 milliseconds. So as you can see over here, I mean, there's a significant improvement in EF core using absolutely the same code base, right? And then in iteration 2, 1529 versus 351. That's a big difference. Let's go a little crazier here. So here, this method here basically does a little adding and a little bit of, you know, CRUD and all that stuff. So that's what we have. So now we are doing a little bit of a CRUD, not just reading the information from the database, but we are also adding information to the database, and then we're doing save changes after that. So as you can see, we have the same set of code for EF6 versus EF core. All right, so exactly the same set of code. Let's run this.
Console's on the other screen.
Oh, I'm sorry?
Console's on the other screen.
Oh, yes, thank you. So mind you, there are 20,000 records, so we're adding quite a bit of information there, and then we're saving it. Let me just move this a little bit to the right. I mean, you can see a significant difference already in the first pass. There you go. So look at the second pass here. EF6 took 21,853 milliseconds. EF core, on the other hand, took only 203 milliseconds. Guys, come on. It's got to be something, right? I mean, there's a yawning gulf, as you can see over here. Look at further. In the last pass, 21,453 versus 145 milliseconds. That's like a drop in the ocean. Sorry?
Orders of magnitude.
Orders of magnitude, literally. See, so as you can see, right before your eyes, I mean, there's nothing fancy out here. It's the same code that was executed against EF6 and the same code for EF core, and the difference is right before you. Literally, it's the order of magnitude as far as the difference is concerned. Is there any questions? We've got a couple of minutes here. Or
Can you use this with in a portable library, for example, to use with Xamarin on an Android phone?
Like a class library?
Yeah, so you can write this with Xamarin, absolutely, and it can also be deployed on iOS and Android and all this stuff, no problems at all. But remember one thing, it is the EF core that we're talking about here, right? Not the full. I'm not talking about the EF6.
Yeah.
Yeah, EF6 is not cross-plat, but EF core is. Yes, absolutely.
Actually, there's something about, you can use it in .NET Core class library. As of version 1.0, it will not build in the class library. You can't do the migrations. You can't run the tool to do it. You can fake it by making it an app temporarily, doing your stuff, turning it into a library, and then building it out.
Okay. There you go. All right, guys. Any other question you have for EF core? Yes.
So I saw that you created the database with that line of code.
Yes.
Lead-
Ensure created?
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe that's also in EF6, right?
No, it is not.
No?
It is not. In EF6, you would have to use migrations to be able to create a database from your mobile.
Okay.
Right?
Does that ensure it's created, does that also take care of migrations too? No?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. Okay, well, the answer is no. Okay, so once you use this method, which is ensure created, okay, it's a single shot only, which means having created the database using this API, you cannot apply migrations anymore. So if you really want to go the migration route, I mean, this was just for the sake of simplicity. I thought, we'll just create, migrations as opposed to, going into the package manager console and issuing, the migration commands and updating the database and so on and so forth. But having created this, that's it, all right? What you can do is, I think you may have seen in the IntelliSense, there's also a method called ensure deleted. So having created the database using ensure created, you can always go and delete it and then start over, using migrations and all that stuff. Of course, it doesn't impact, your classes and all that stuff. Your POCO classes, stay as they are, but at least it gives you the opportunity to modify your class, add a class or property or navigation properties, and then apply all of those changes to your database using the migrations, right? From that time on. Right. Yes, sir.
One
when we say core doesn't have this or that of a framework, is that because it's still new and these features will be added as plugins on top of this core, or is that a deliberate strip down optimization permanently?
Yeah, so good question. So you're right. This one is a version 1 product. Okay, so Microsoft, could have waited a couple of years and then added, the entire slew of database providers all at once. But they thought, you know what, we'll just give you, one little bit at a time. But with Entity Framework Core 1.0, you still have a good number of database providers, both relational and non-relational. Right? Majority of the people actually work, with some sort of a relational database like SQL Server and all that stuff. But here, of course, you can work, with SQL Compact and SQLite.
Yes, that's the question. Is that a permanent deliberate thing to make it optimized, or is that a pathway towards sometime in the future to make them compatible or to fill in the blanks?
This is for EF6 you're talking about?
For core. So
For core?
is core deliberate strip down for optimization purposes?
Yes, yes.
Or is it a new slate, but it will over time become feature complete?
Yes, it will become feature complete, but the thing is, my friend, it's already optimized right now.
Yeah, that's
Is-
I'm just looking at, is it permanent or is it as a long-term feature development?
Oh yeah, the fact that it's a whole new API that it has been written on, it is optimized from day one, and I'm pretty sure this optimization and all the stuff is actually going to go a long way as and when they add other database providers.
And just the reason I ask is because some of the frameworks that actually do this micro framework approach. So there used to be a big framework, and then all of a sudden say, okay, we're not going to ever do big frameworks anymore. We're going to strictly do what they call micro frameworks. So
Oh,
that's what I was wondering.
okay.
Is this going towards a
All
micro
right.
framework?
Okay. I see. Okay. No, that's a good question. So I think, sorry, what's your name? Stasha. So Stasha, I think you may be referring to something like Dapper. Dapper is actually an ORM, but it's a micro ORM. I wouldn't compare this to Dapper. I would not compare this to Dapper. Okay, so it's not a micro ORM, although you're right, this is lightweight, but this is actually a full-blown ORM. Okay, to the likes of Entity Framework. It's just that it is not feature complete. They're going to be adding more things, but it is highly optimized. Okay, now that's a good question. Actually, that reminds me. Now, should you be using Entity Framework all the time? Well, the answer is, what do you think? What do you think?
No.
No, not really. So if you want to say, for example, you're working on a project where you want to pull, I'll be very quick. You want to pull, let's say, a couple million rows, from a database. You don't want to use Entity Framework Core or 6 or Nhibernate or this micro, the Dapper that we talked about, or any other ORM for that matter. You might just go down the wire and start using AD.NET. Because AD.NET basically works very closely with SQL Server. So you can actually leverage some of the SQL Server capabilities to do all these bulk insert and update and all that stuff, in a snap. So that's actually going to be a lot faster. So EF, is good for what it's worth, but I would tend to use EF for enterprise applications, not for importing, gazillions of records from the database. I would just use AD.NET for that matter. All right. Okay. So on that note, we'll call this a day. And thanks very much for coming out.
Wrap up, because I know the library probably wants to go home too. So thank you all again for coming to the first session of the 2016-2017 season. Awesome. We will do some quick announcements. Just like we couldn't have this meetup without you guys, we can't have this meetup without our sponsors. So thank you so much to Infragistics, JetBrains with their snazzy new logo, Stackify, Ozcode, Reflect Software, Telerik, RevDebug, which used to be called Time Machine for .NET, Codesmith Tools, Nevron, and Code Magazine. We kind of heard you guys last year when you guys said, I already have this, draw again, that kind of thing. So I've spent some time this summer, Lori spent some time this summer trying to go out and get new swag suppliers for you guys. So we have tons of new stuff. There's actually one more that's going to be coming. No Starch Press is going to be delivering us some books. So we'll have some programming books to give away as well, some ebooks and or paper books. as well as some discount codes for that. So we will have stuff to give away and bring your way. So big thanks again to tonight's financial sponsor. Please give them another round of applause. Dean was awesome. I didn't expect him to bring swag, so that was great that he did that. He did tell me that if you guys do want to reach out to him and you didn't get a card from him or you didn't get his email address, I do have it. If you want to come see me afterwards, I'd be more than happy to give it to you. It sounds like they're a pretty cool company to work for from all the photos on their website and stuff. So, and they're building some pretty cool software if they're building in the healthcare space. So, and again, you can get all their information there. Volunteers just don't do the work, they make it work. So because this is the first session of the year, we thought we'd do a recap and show you who we all are. So the lovely Curelet-Balan is the organizer of this group. She's going to be running the Xamarin Nights on the second Wednesday of each month. My name is Ken Cinerelli. I'll be the co-organizer and I'll be running the .NET groups. At any point, if you ever need to have questions, you want to reach out to us, please do so. Our lovely volunteers, Arlen, at the back there, he's a hospitality welcome champion. And Dan is incognito. There is no pictures of Dan on the internet anywhere. So, so that's what he looks like when he works. He has a hood over his face with a question mark on it. But he's the swag ticket man. That's the best way I could describe him. But he's like the general all-around brute. He carries things. He makes sure we're on time. Yeah. So if you ever have a question, ask Dan. He'll know. So. Just like we had RL Solutions in today, we need more session sponsors. Those session sponsors help pay for the pizza and the pop and make sure that we're delivering good content to you guys, help pay for gas for speakers to come in. So if you know of a company or you have a company that you would like to sponsor us, please let me know. You can reach out to me there. You can reach out to Lori. We're always looking for session sponsors. You can rate the meetup. Again, this is very important for our groups. It kind of it helps with Microsoft to show that we're a very vibrant and active group. So please rate our groups. Tell us what you like, what you didn't like. You can leave a star rating. You can leave an in-depth message. Please go on Meetup and leave a comment. If you're looking for a job, we have a careers page, so you can go on and post a free listing, or you can see if there's any current listings that you're looking for. Something new we're going to try is anybody here currently looking for work? If you want to stand up and raise a hand, or is there anybody who's looking for workers? No? Okay, we'll continue to do this. If you guys are, or if you know somebody, please tell them to come on out. Oh, yes?
I got a shed that needs building.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah.
The company I work for is always looking for people.
Which company?
Sodi Incorporated.
Sodi Incorporated? Okay. Is it Sodi?
Life management.
Sodi, they sponsored us one.
Is it Sodi.com or SodiInc.com?
Sodi.com.
Okay.
SOTI.
Yeah. Perfect.
They sponsored
Okay.
us last year.
And .NET Stack?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Cool.
They, pretty much take can't get enough.
Okay. In town here or in Toronto? Mississauga.
Yeah,
Great.
They do have an office in town. but
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's really something.
Yeah, okay, so the one they have in Waterloo is the Research and Innovation Lab.
Yep.
That's a lot smaller.
Okay.
But yeah, the main office headquarters is in.
Cool. So yeah, if you guys know of people who are looking for work, 90% of jobs are found through networking or through people who know people. Like you can submit resumes till you're blue in the face, but if you know somebody who can vouch for you, this is a great way to get to know people and where you can learn more and do that. So we'll do some quick roundup. On October 12th, Lori will be hosting another Xamarin workshop. There's already 13 people going. There's only 12 spots left as of about 3 o'clock this afternoon. So if you are into going, checking that out, or if you want to go check that out, please do. Our next session will be October 26th. This will be with Andrej Marukovic, and he'll be talking about open source in the enterprise. So if that sounds like something you are interested in, please sign up. I released the schedule today, so there are lots of spaces, so please sign up for that.
And that's the day after my birthday, so I'm going to bring cake.
Woohoo! All right. It's 2 days after my wife's birthday.
We all bring presents.
Yeah. I thought she was bringing from us. October 6th at the London.NET Meetup, Arlen is going to be speaking, doing his PowerShell presentation that he did here last year, so he'll be doing it there. From what I hear, it's slightly revamped, so that should be cool. Go check that out if you're in the London area. Hacker Nest will be doing another meetup. They'll be doing it on October the 3rd. You can already see 73 people have signed up to go to that. And that was on the weekend I took this. It's probably up into the 80s by now. So always looks like a great event. I know, Lori, you go all often, so it looks like a fun time. So
You guys go too.
yeah, cool. MVP Mix is coming back to Toronto. I'm going to turn it over to Obi in a second. October 17th and 18th. Last year was held at the Microsoft headquarters in Mississauga. Will be again this year. Myself, Lori, Tom Walker, Ed Musters, Andre Marukovic, you'll be speaking. There's a whole whack of us that are speaking. So
Yeah, there's going to be Chandler, of course, and then there's also Casey, who's flying in from Redmond. She's a program manager over there. So yeah, it's going to be great event, 2 tracks simultaneously, and as Ken mentioned, we were there last year, and then we're bringing it again. It was actually in Dallas this May, and I actually flew. So yeah, it's going to be a great event. Now it's a 2-day show, okay, but you don't have to attend both days. I mean, if your company is willing to sponsor you or pay for your training, by all means, take advantage of it. It's actually very, very affordable. $150 for 2 days, and that includes hot breakfast, beverages throughout, and lunch. Right? How can you go wrong? I mean, if you okay, all right. So that's what it is. 17, 18. If you want to just attend a single day event, that's 17th. But 18th is the workshop. If you want, to attend both days. All right. So $150 covers both days. If you want a single day event on the 17th, $25. That's it. It was 95. I actually brought it down to 25, just yesterday.
perfect. Thank you, Obi.
Hey,
Last event is Microsoft Tech Summit. It's going to be at the Congress Center, October 27th, 28th. It's cloud and Hyper-V based, so it's not just for IT workers, it's for developers and IT professionals. It's all free. Registration is open right now, so please sign up. Speakers will be coming right from Redmond, so they're going to be Microsoft program managers and professionals, so you can go and meet with them. They're actually going to have meeting spaces too, and they will you can meet with them to discuss your problems as well. So, all right. The moment you guys have been waiting for, we are going to deliver some swag now. So we'll do a quick draw here. I have a ton of stuff to give away here. So first thing we'll do is